Today we're kicking off our journey going for Bisgear by going for the best cape in the game, the Completionist. What do you mean the Completionist cape isn't the best cape in the game anymore? It doesn't require bossing anymore? So it turns out while I was away from the game, they removed the Reaper Crew achievement from the comp cape requirements. I'm a bit surprised by that because surely killing every boss is a part of completing the game, but in return it doesn't give any combat benefits anymore. This means in order to get the best capes in the game, we need to head to Zuk, one of the bosses of God Wars Dungeon 3 or the Elder God Wars. The Zuk encounter is kind of like an Inferno encounter from old school, but it has two difficulties, a normal mode and a hard mode. I think hard mode is kind of like the Inferno and normal mode is just like the easier entry level mode. In order to unlock hard mode, you need to do a flawless run of normal mode, and in order to get the cape upgrades, which turn your kiln capes into the new Zuk capes, you need to do a run without banking or dying. You can then do a flawless hard mode run to unlock the ability to combine all three of the capes into one cape, plus the fourth one when Necromancy comes out, but for now, we're just going to focus on getting the free capes from normal mode. The Igneous Cow Medj, the Igneous Cow Zil, and the Igneous Cow Ket. The Zuk encounter is primarily an endurance test with a mini boss fight at the end, so I've taken a setup that focuses heavily on reducing the damage we take so that I can soul split through most of the damage we end up taking. The main things of note to achieving this are the use of the Animate Dead spell with a magic tank armor set, the Obsidian Mage helmet with some Tokkul donated at the coffer at the Fight Cauldron. If I remember rightly, this gives about 15% damage reduction for just one spot, while also contributing as a mage tank armor piece towards Animate Dead. And we're also using a Hellhound familiar. The Hellhound takes a portion of the damage for you, and its special attack allows it to heal up. So as long as you remember to keep using scrolls and don't let it die, it's just another damage reduction. Consumable wise, you want the best combo overload you have, a weapon poison, a replenishment potion to get some adrenaline for the challenges. The Excalibur and Ancient Elven Ritual Shard are the most inventory space efficient methods for restoring each of health and prayer. You'll definitely want a shield, preferably with Turtling 4 if you can manage it. And I was supposed to use Vampirism, but I actually forgot to on our first run. Trust me when I say this isn't the first, and it's definitely not going to be the last time I forget to use something. So the Zuk encounter is made up of 18 different waves. The first 15 of these are split into 3 sections. There's a melee focus on the first 5 waves, then a ranged focus on the next 5, and then a mage focus on waves 11 through 15. Within each of those 5 wave sections, the first 3 waves are pretty typical fare, just kill all the mobs that spawn. The safest place for most waves is to camp in this little cubby down in the southeast corner. And generally you want to move to try and make more mobs move to you rather than going to them. There are 3 main mobs to be extra aware of during these waves. The first is the Key, which is this little bird thing. It attacks with melee or it has a special attack that is range based, both of which will drain your prayer and drain your stats every time they hit you. These are worth dealing with as quickly as possible. Next up is the Tok Zil, which is this ranged mob. If it stands still, it gets a buff that stacks up pretty high and causes it to hurt a lot. So before you engage them, you want to force them to move first. And finally is the Ket Zek, which every single magic auto attack it does will apply a burn to you. This burn can be cleared with freedom, but if you fail to do so, then after fighting a few of them, you will start taking very high taking damage. At wave 4, we encounter our first Igneous mob. There's only one of these mobs per style, so I'll just be referring to them as Igneous Melee, Igneous Ranged, and Igneous Mage. Each Igneous mob must be interacted with in some way before it can be fully damaged. In the case of the Igneous Melee mob, it must be stunned first. This is why I don't have either of my stuns in my Revolution bar, because I will be using them specifically for these mobs. Each Igneous wave has 3 of its relevant Igneous mob, and these are the only mobs you need to kill. You can kill the others for loot if you want to, but you only need to kill the 3 Igneous mobs. This gives you an extra action button, which then makes Zuk attackable. In order to clear the wave, you have to reduce Zuk's health by 50,000. In order to do this, kill your 3 Igneous mobs, head on over to Zuk and prepare. Once you're ready, hit the extra action button and go to town. If you fail to do the 50k damage, don't worry, because all you have to do is re-kill the 3 Igneous mobs and then Zuk becomes attackable again with however much health you left him with. However, doing the 50k in one go is a requirement for a flawless run. Progressing to wave 5, we encounter our first challenge wave, and first up is a DPS challenge, so you might need to save some of your juice from phasing Zuk. The challenge here is to kill all 5 mobs before they finish charging up their attack. You don't need to pass the challenges to get your cape, but you do need to survive, so killing as many as possible is recommended. Each wave after a challenge wave has an increasing number of Jads, starting at 1, then 2, and finally the triple Jad wave at wave 16. So as soon as you're done with your challenge, get to your safe spot and start dealing with the mobs as usual. Since waves 6 through 8 are pretty standard fare, we're going to jump ahead to wave 9, which is another Igneous wave. This time it's the Igneous Rangers, and their Igneous mechanic is that they need to be hit by a threshold ability first. The way I tend to deal with these is use one threshold on each of them and spend any excess adrenaline on Gothic Staff specs on mobs that have already had their Igneous shield removed. Just like before, you only need to kill the 3 Igneous mobs and then you can hit your extra action button to start going ham on Zuk. The second challenge is a DPS challenge of a different flavour. The mob that spawns can only be damaged by hits 3000 or higher, so you want to be using your big hitter abilities like Wild Magic and Gothic Staff on this guy. If you're struggling to hit the 3k threshold consistently, consider dropping a Vuln Bomb on this guy. And just like before, when the challenge is over, we'll go into a Jad wave. This time, there's 2 of them. Waves 11 through 13 are once again standard fare, so we're going to be jumping ahead to wave 14, our Igneous Mage wave. These have a shield around them that you lower by standing near them. Standing next to one of the mobs until its shield completely disappears allows you to deal full damage to it. And once again, you only need to kill the 3 Igneous mobs and then hit your extra action button to start attacking Zuk. The next and final challenge is a defensive challenge. 3 mobs are going to take it in turns firing bolts at you, and you have to take no damage from any of them in order to pass this challenge. Make sure you have 100% or close to it adrenaline, and if you have a high enough level shield with Turtling 4 on it, you can just press barricade and be done with this entire challenge. With a lower tier shield, you might have to resonance the first hit and then barricade the rest, but remember that the shield used for this purpose doesn't necessarily need to be the same style you're using, and stuff like the Elder Rune shield is a pretty high tier as well as being relatively cheap. Next up is the triple Jad wave, and honestly the same safe spot we've been using this whole time works perfectly here. You can just deal with them one at a time. The next wave is a Har-Aken encounter, with a little bit of a twist. He works basically as he does in the Fight Kiln. He surfaces for a bit, you can damage him, and then he goes down, and you have to kill some tentacles or just survive them. But now he has a special attack where he will launch projectiles into the air targeted at your current position, and if you're hit by one of them, you will lose a bunch of adrenaline as well as have reduced adrenaline gain. This drastically reduces your DPS against Har-Aken, so it's worth dodging them. Otherwise, I just suggest sticking to the north side of the room and ignoring the tentacles on the south side, and save all your damage enhancers and thresholds for when Har-Aken is actually up, because the tentacles aren't that hard to keep up with. When Har-Aken is down, the special attack is enhanced from a single point of damage to a couple of patterns around where you are standing. It starts with a small plus and then goes into 2 lines of a big cross, and it does exactly the same as before. It does a little bit of damage and drains your adrenaline and slows your adrenaline gain, so you don't want to get hit by this. Finally, with Har-Aken defeated, it's on to the Zuk fight. Now, I had attempted this twice before and both times failed to get a cape improvement because I failed the pizza phase, which is one of the hardest parts of the fight. But at this point I realized I completely forgot the order of Zuk's abilities, what exactly he does, when I should be resonancing and all that stuff. So I kind of just flailed about and barely managed to scrape through this fight, in spite of tanking basically every ability. And if you've seen how many other fails I'd been highlighting throughout these clips, a lot of the times I was saying you should do something and then I proceeded to not do it or do it wrong. So you don't need to be perfect to get a cape, but it will help you a lot. However, in this case, I did the Zuk fight so badly that I'm actually going to use a different run to explain how to do it. As mentioned, we did manage to get our cape upgrade this run, so I'm going to be using it to upgrade our mage cape. This is debatably the strongest of the 3 in my opinion. They all do something relatively similar. They reduce the cost of an ultimate to 60% and buff it in some way. In the case of Omni Power, it is 60% adrenaline for 4 hits of reduced damage. However, it hits so hard that it, along with Greater Chain, actually trivializes the hard mode version of the first DPS challenge. So with our mage cape upgraded, we're going to put it to use by trying to go for a flawless run. Since I didn't have any difficulties hitting the 50k damage threshold on Zuk in the first run, the only thing I really need to improve is the challenges. I think I failed all but one of the challenges last time. So the first DPS challenge, I failed to kill one of the mobs. So in this time I just cleaned up my rotation a bit and managed to take all 5 of them out. The second challenge was the one I succeeded at last time, so this time I wasn't particularly concerned about it. However, I do want to demonstrate just how busted the new Omni power is when it kills half of the mob in one ability. And as for the third challenge, well, I already explained how you do this properly. You resonance the first hit if you can't barricade in time, and then you just barricade. You do need to make sure you don't spend too much adrenaline getting the 50k damage on Zuk, but honestly I didn't find that to be a particularly challenging with the Gothic stuff available. And finally, let's do a run through of a slightly better Zuk fight. The first thing to note about the Zuk fight is that every ability is broken up by 3 auto attacks, except you get an extra one before the pizza phase. There are 4 special attacks to deal with before you get to pizza phase, and the first one is You Will Break Beneath Me, otherwise known as Geothermal Burn. He applies a burn to you. If you use Freedom, you get rid of the burn. This is the only time you'll want to be using Freedom. Next up is Sear or Suffer, which is one of the most detail-dense mechanics, but one of the simplest to deal with. He hits you with melee, and then a tick later you take 2 magic hits. If you're quick enough, you can swap to Deflect Mage. But the main part is that he applies 15 stacks of a debuff that start draining your constitution. If you have mobile, you can immediately surge to remove 10 stacks, and then just walk back to your Sunshine or Death Swiftness to remove the other 5. This can also be done with double surge or by using dive. But make sure you have at least one of these available for the next special. The next special is Quake, and he's going to slam his sword into the ground and start spawning quakes under you. As soon as his sword hits the ground, you hit your surge and you're good to go. Next up is Empowered Magic, where Zuk will say either die, be gone, or Fool's Flames burn within me. He'll also do a fist pump. With Animate Dead you can survive this, but your best bet is just to use Disruption Shield or Resonance on it. This was why I brought a Power Burst of Vitality, just in case I messed this up, but I think I forgot to use it anyway. And then finally, it's on to the Pizza Phase. This Pizza Phase will spawn one of each of the Igneous mobs in the order of Melee, Range, and then Mage, and you need to kill all 3 of them and hit your extra action button to stop Zuk from insta-killing you. For the melee mob, I just dive over to him, stun him, and then kill him with Gothic Staff and Basics, saving my thresholds for the Ranger, who I then surge over to and immediately use 2 thresholds on and any basics needed to finish them off. And then finally I dive over to the Mage. While waiting in the shield, I just build up adrenaline with some basics, and then just spam whatever I need to finish him off. Once all 3 are dead, you want to build up adrenaline on Zuk so that you can drop an immediate Sunshine or Death Swiftness, and then you hit your extra action button and start the special cycle all over again. The special cycle will also reset when he hits 100k health. So if you're going to hit 100k health and he's just done a burn on you, you actually want to save your freedom until the second stack gets applied, otherwise you won't be able to remove it in time. There's a lot going on in this fight, but aside from the pizza phase, none of it can really individually kill you in a short amount of time. So if you do fail a mechanic, my advice would just be focus on dealing with the next mechanic and just slowly recover yourself, whether that's spamming restores to deal with the constitution drain or healing up after a big magic hit. This fight is very forgiving in normal mode, as I found out in my first attempt. And with all of those improvements, we managed to get the flawless run on our second complete run. This unlocked hard mode, which to be honest I'm not planning to do today. I will get to it in the future, but for now I'm just interested in getting the 3 base capes and then a stone for necromancy. And on the note of that, I actually had to head over to the fight kiln and re-get my capes because I actually deleted them all because I thought I was going to be using this account for the new series, which is coming on Sunday by the way. But with all of our kiln capes, we went and upgraded our ranged and our melee capes into their Zuk variants. So we now have the 3 best combat capes in the game, which if we then did a flawless hard mode run, we would be able to combine into 1 cape that would have all of their benefits. The ranged cape affects Deadshot by giving it a damage buff, a longer dot, and reducing its adrenaline cost to 60%. This is going to be very helpful for Nex, which is a boss I love doing. The melee cape buffs Overpower by making it hit twice and doing a bit more damage. And again, the same 60% adrenaline. I have no idea what the Necromancy one is going to do, but I'm super excited to find out. A quick tip for that, you can get your Igneous Stone now, because you don't need to do the Zuk fight with whatever style you want to upgrade like you do the fight kiln. So you can just get an Igneous Stone now and use it on Necromancy as soon as you get your kiln cape for Necromancy. As for when I'm going to go for a hard mode run, well, I would like to do it with Mage, but I put all of my money into upgrading the range combat style, so I don't actually have enough money to get the Mage upgrades I think I need, and plus I still need to learn stuff like 4-tick auto attack to meet some of the DPS checks. So I'm not 100% sure when I'm going to be doing it, but roughly I would like to attempt it before Necromancy comes out. But otherwise, I hope you enjoyed our journey getting our Zuk capes, and I hope it helps you with getting yours if you've not already got them. If you have a combined Zuk cape, let me know any tips down below. And with that, I hope you will have a wonderful week, and I'll catch you again next time.